Chapter 16 of Psychopomp Drive. Written by Janeen Leese-Taylor. Read aloud by SkyAsimaru. Chapter 16 Out in the Rain. The rain pattered lightly across the rooftops, scattering into rainbows where it formed small puddles on the stone. The quiet drumming soothed the tired city, washing away the ill-gotten gains of the week. Even for the dead, Sundays were a day of rest. The streets were already beginning to empty. The final traces of whisperers and corruptors chased back into hiding before the streetlights had even started to flare to life. Finley felt the water splash around his feet as they traveled, but the damp and the cold no longer bothered him. The smell of storm clouds was beginning to fade from the air, leaving everything above the level of the rooftops crisp and clean. He inhaled deeply as he bounced along the wooden banisters of the ancient shop fronts, balancing with his arms outstretched. His long feline tail served him well, keeping him as poised and elegant as a gymnast.
I always loved nights like this one,
Aaron said thoughtfully as he floated along next to him. He was bare-footed, but didn't seem to mind. It wasn't like he touched the ground anyway. The rain was clinging to the feathers on his collar, weighing them down. They shimmered with a purple light where the water-repellent oil from the bird still clung to the tips.
The human world has always been so fascinating to me. A circular system that never ends.
He smiled to himself, a knowing smile that pulled the bone mask of his face upwards.
Nature always provides.
Finley watched the other Amorini from the corner of his eye, following their movements above him on the rooftops as he dropped down onto the street. He liked to walk on the roads on nights like this, where there would be no one to see them. Walking there amongst the shops made him feel a little closer to the life he had before. He had memories of walking home, staggering and tipsy at all hours of the night, singing with Thorn and his friends at his side. What he wouldn't give to be back there again. He might have taken his time with it all, paused to look around and take it all in. Michael's stupid jokes, Baker's appetite for soggy chips, Thorn's adventurous spirit.
Aaron,
the young spirit started, watching as the spectral form next to him bobbed like he was dancing through the air.
Were you ever alive? Life and death are just two sides of the same coin,
Aaron answered with a thoughtful hum.
Think of me as the coin itself.
But you used to come here, to the surface world, a lot? Finley prompted. His cat-like ears swiveled on top of his silvery hair, the darker fur damp with rain.
We used to be able to walk amongst the people, back in the days before technology and innovation became what the humans worshipped,
the god answered with a sigh.
We used to sweep across the world, bringing the seasons.
Finley frowned. But aren't you a god of death? He questioned. He let his eyes wander along the closed shop fronts as they walked. taking in the latest fashionable colors and styles. The chocolate fountain in the confectionery window had been shut off for the night, but the machine still glistened with the sticky residue.
I am a god of change, of opportunity,
the god responded with a sniff. There was something different about his tone, like he disapproved of the question.
Death is just another word for revolution, transformation. Energy is impossible to destroy once it has been created. All we can do is mold it for a new purpose. Sometimes that creates something new and exciting, like you are now. Or sometimes it makes something rather boring, like a corpse or Reichardt.
Above them, the tall, slender figure of Reichardt paused for a moment, clearing his throat loudly without turning. The dark ears on the top of his head tilted slightly in their direction as he resumed his progress across the shop fronts. Most things were within earshot when you were working with ears like theirs. A smile pulled up the corner of Finley's lip as he considered the notion.
A new purpose, huh?
He mused.
I think that's a really nice idea. It is more than an idea, the god scoffed. It is the reality we see all around us. Nature is circular. Everything begins in one form and becomes another. We each serve as a cog in the machine of the world. We feed her with our life, our experiences.
The Amarini smiled, looking across the street at the metal shutter for red, white, and brew. Something stirred in his chest, like a deep pang of longing.
Don't you ever get lonely, existing all this time?
Aron shook his head, tiny eyes watching him from inside the sockets.
When my followers started to die away and there were fewer people who remembered me in the world, my job fell to other gods, new spirits who could continue my work even after I had gone. I was lost, but then I found Psychopomp Drive.
Finley paused in the center of the high street, his ears perked up in interest.
So you weren't always just there?
Oh, no, his companion responded, making sweeping gestures with his humanoid hands.
I was invited there by Dawn.
I heard Salo mention him before, Finley said, starting to walk again. He glanced up towards the rooftops, keeping an eye out for the others. Alvaro had come to a stop on the edge of a large retail shop. From the flicker of light, the Amarini appeared to be having one of his usual smoke breaks. Finley turned back to his companion again with a curious expression.
Who is he, this Dawn guy? Dawn is one of the founding members of Psychopomp Drive,
Aron answered, eyeing up a particularly interesting shop front next to them.
It can be difficult to imagine, but even gods were young and foolish once. When you have all that power and responsibility, you can become careless with both. Dawn wanted us to be better. He wanted to create a place for immortals to come together, share knowledge and intel.
He waved a hand in the air, creating flowers in the pot next to him with a thoughtful flourish.
Over the years, more and more gods and goddesses were invited to join the network. There are portals in Psychopomp Drive that lead to every corner of the planet and to every imaginable afterlife.
He must be a really powerful god, the cat spirit remarked. It was hard not to be in awe at the concept of a place that held all of eternity within its doors. Even broaching the subject threatened to bring on a migraine.
A god's power on earth is relative,
the older spirit continued. Droplets of rain began to run along his antlers, drawing lines along the curve of his face.
We get stronger the more that we are worshipped. As the years pass, we lose some of our power, and others rise to take our place. Even gods are not immune to the turning of the world.
A thin ray of evening sunshine began to filter through the clouds above them, and Aaron tilted his head back, basking in its ruby glow.
Take this rain shower, for instance. To something tiny like a field mouse, this storm is as loud and dangerous as any predator. But without the rains, the crops would die, and the mouse would go hungry. If you look at the larger picture of the world, there is no good or evil. There is only what is necessary for the planet to survive.
Finley smiled softly to himself, a hand reaching up to trace the lines of his jacket buttons.
It's all about perspective, I guess,
he mused. His eyes were pulled up to the balcony overhead, where the other Amarini had taken a break. Seeing them there, silhouetted against the evening sky, he realized he had become quite close to the other spirits. This was by no means how he thought he would be spending his eternity, but there were silver linings in every cloud.
It isn't just life that is circular,
he thought.
It's death too.
He leaped up the side of the next building with feline ease, using the balcony and overhangs to pull himself upwards. He dusted himself off as he came to stand at the summit, watching as the god appeared behind him on the rooftop, seemingly without effort. The bones and silver chains around his neck were almost musical in their discord. As he shifted his weight, the pale, almost translucent skin that stretched over his arms and legs creaked and whined unnaturally. He was like a walking corpse, albeit a very friendly one.
Any sign of hollows from up here?
Finley asked as he came to join the others. Alvaro exhaled a cloud of smoke and then passed the cigarette to Reichardt, who sucked in a deep breath of his own.
Nothing so far,
the Swede replied, casting his eyes down over the city again.
Think this might have been a wasted trip?
I don't mind, Finley said, letting out a soft groan as he stretched out his back and pulled down his hood.
It's a nice night for a walk, and the rain's even beginning to ease off now.
Well, aren't you a glass half full kind of guy?
The older man teased.
One of us has to be, old man,
Finley ribbed, nudging against his side playfully. From behind the fog of smoke, he could see Reichardt's almost imperceptible smile. "Oh, he called you old, Alvy. Are you going to take that?" Abby egged him on, mischievously, green eyes sparkling with mirth. She was sitting against the lip of the building, with her knees brought up to her chest. She had pulled up her hood to protect her from the worst of the rain, and her usually tidy blonde hair was disheveled and hung forward and over her face. Her spear was resting across her lap like a pampered house pet. The spirit of the reaper, a rather snobbish former philanthropist named Arthur, often regaled her with stories of his esteemed charity work on a night like this one, when there wasn't much else to distract them.
"Children, tiens-toi bien,"
Reichardt scolded good-naturedly without turning, bringing the remnants of the cigarette from his lips and exhaling. He raised his head, his ears pointing upwards and adjusting to take in a sound. It was only a matter of seconds before Finley heard it too. The rush of sirens streaming past along the waterfront, the throb of their alarms ricocheting off the nearby glass windows. There were a lot of them, police cars and ambulances, disappearing past in a rush of white and neon yellow. Blue and red lights illuminated the walls.
"Where do you think they're going?"
Finley questioned, following the cars as they plotted their course through the city center and disappeared from sight.
"That number of emergency vehicles cannot be a good sign,"
Reichardt noted, dropping the cigarette butt and crushing it beneath the toes of his boot. He pulled out his twin blades, curling the red ribbon around both hands. It was the only thing that ever gave away when the man was anxious, a tic that had prevailed even through his years of being a spirit. Abby groaned as she unfurled from her position, balancing her weight on the spear as she straightened. "Do you reckon we should follow them?" Alvaro shrugged and glanced in Aaron's direction.
"It means going off the normal patrol route. You're all right with that?"
The god shifted his weight, his coat catching in the wind and billowing in against the space where his back was.
"Don't let me stop you," he said with raised hands. "I'm just here to provide extra firepower. This is still your operation."
Finley faced the way that the cars had gone, listening intently for the sirens as they peeled off into the distance.
"It sounds like they're heading away from the river, towards the zoo."
Alvaro pulled out his hammer and nodded towards the black and white buildings ahead of them.
"Lead the way, kid."
They traveled along Station Road, past red and brown bricked homes and blue and yellow neon buses. They dropped under railway tracks as quiet as the night itself, creeping along past the sleeping forms of red Royal Mail vans. By the time that they crossed the Hoole Bridge, its bricks were dark with rain. Narrow housing areas gave way to open countryside, lush green hedges, and dozing cul-de-sacs. The smell of hot food was enticing as the local kitchens began to open for the lunchtime rush. Union Jacks hung from windows in strips of colorful bunting, and the wandering spirits made casual observers of converted mills and village halls alike. Opposite the small estate on Cahall Road, The black and green iron gate for Chester Zoo lay open. Crowds of people pouring out and diving into the streets. From their vantage point on the roof of a small townhouse across the road, Finley could make out the flash of the police lights, the staticky sound of a voice across a megaphone. He frowned.
What do you think's going on in there?
Reichardt appeared at his shoulder, his bright eyes narrowing.
Can't you feel that? He questioned. There are hollows in there. Must be 100 or more. The air is practically vibrating with them.
Finley closed his eyes and focused on the space ahead of them, feeling a kind of pressure in the air around him. He wouldn't even have noticed it if Reichardt hadn't pointed it out to him. His intuition was nowhere near as strong as the first Amarini's. It was a feeling that was hard to define, something that always accompanied the influx of hollows and lost souls. Whisperers made the air feel unnaturally cold and still. Corruptors made it vibrate and grow hot. When the two would come together, the air became as tense as a thunderstorm.
Corruptors and whisperers all in one place,
Abby observed next to him, as if reading his mind. She glanced up at her taller companion warily.
Do you think it's her, Reich?
Reichardt's ears twitched as he listened intently.
If she is here, she is choosing to prioritize the living over the hollows.
He frowned.
That is more than a little concerning.
Alvaro leaned forward, closing his eyes and focusing his senses on the strange frequencies.
So, what are we going to do then? He asked. Do we head in, or do we turn around? Warn the others? There are too many humans here, Reichardt said. We have to try to clear a path for the living to escape.
Welp, you heard the captain,
Abby chirped, straightening and pulling out her spear. She spun it around the agile fingers of one hand, before finally taking a firm grip and holding it out in front of her.
Time to kick some bad guy butt!
To be continued in Chapter 17.